Greetings and welcome to Relationships Unfiltered, a podcast about relationships, love, lifestyle, passion, sex, and a whole bunch more. I'm your host here, Rashad Bakir, and thank you for tuning into my channel. I wish you appreciate it. You can follow me along on all the social media platforms on Instagram at Rashad Bakir. You can also find me on TikTok, which is Relationships Unfiltered, Rashad Bakir, and RB Media 323 on YouTube and other platforms out there with the show Relationships Unfiltered with Rashad Bakir. This show is intended for adult audiences, so and we're going to be talking about a couple weeks ago. I put out a survey and asking about Simps in honor of National Simps Day a couple weeks ago. And so I want to follow up with that, talking a little bit about Simps and talking about not only Simps, but the defeated man. And so Simps have been around since forever. And the character of Simp today, particularly in the dating space and relationship space, or marriage space, and so forth, has really created a caricature of man uh, in regard to this whole Simp uh, character type. And so I want to elaborate a little bit on the Simp, but also the defeated man syndrome too. I want to throw in on that, and I'll explain what that's all about. So the simp, in taking into what I talked about with regard to the survey of the simp and how people view it, there are many angles to it. First of all, as I pointed out, there is a bit of simp in every man who have a love and concern, a liking to, a wanting of any female, particularly any female in his life. He will exhibit certain aspects of the simp. Okay, just so you know that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is one of the things that I got in a lot of feedback from men and women was that when we think of the simp, when we think the caricature of simp is a weak man, a man who overextends himself, a man who acquiesces, a man who is essentially a beta man, um, a yes man, a man who doesn't really have backbone, um, and so forth. He comes off in the culture as being thirsty or desperate, or both, in that sense, to please his woman or the woman he's pursuing. And so when a man gets pigeonholed in this sense, it's an uphill battle, you know, and you're kind of stuck in that. You get kind of stuck in that. It's hard to get out of that to reclaim yourself to be, if you were that, or want to aspire to be that, an alpha man, or a man who is essentially who is his own man, who has a strong character of who he is, and all those sorts of things. Now, so what people were saying, and just kind of listening to folks and kind of understanding their thoughts to it, is that again, on the surface of it, there's nothing wrong with a man who cares about doing things for his woman, um, and so forth and so on with that. The problem lies again, as I said, when he does it to the degree of that he makes himself appear and come off as weak. He comes off just to appease the woman and is not setting his foot down on certain things, and so forth. And therefore, she will walk all over him. She will lose respect for him and things of that nature. Um, and as I said, he comes off very thirsty, desperate, and so forth. And in those characters of that's the negative part. So there's some negatives and there's some positives that come with the simp character type. But as I state, there's a bit of simp in every man. So what I'm saying about it, if a man cares about the woman that he cares about, then he's going to willing to be doing some certain things that another man, if they are looking under the description of simp, and however that might be described, they might say, "Oh, he's being a simp. He's doing this to be that." And I talk with some of my friends. There's certain things like with any of your friend group that they do in their relationships that you probably wouldn't do yourself. So that's a natural. That's everyone runs into that in your friend circle of folks who are also in relationships. They do things that you don't do, and how the dynamics of their relationship wouldn't work for you, kind of stuff. So, um, so in and of itself, the simp has been, like I said, been a marginalized sort of character, a degraded man, who is looked at as being weak and whimsy and all that kind of stuff. And it's not a favorable title label to have. Okay. And so forth and so on with that. It's thought of as being nerdy. You thought of, like I said, of being a very soft, acquiescent kind of guy who doesn't really stand up for much, in that character type of how we look at a simp to be. Okay, and it's a pejorative to a man's character of who he is to be called a simp. It's insulting, in other words, um, for a man to be called a simp, because again, it's that you are a soft guy, in the sense that when it comes to the dynamics of you and your woman and so forth. Now, I want to add to that with the concept of the defeated man. And the defeated man is an expansion to what has occurred with the simp in the culture, to the fact that this culture out here in the dating, in the whole identity, gender politics space, and all the stuff that's going on between men and women relationship dynamics, is this assault on men, and to defeat the man, okay, to break him down, to buck break the man. And so that's what I came up with this term with the defeated man concept, syndrome, and so forth. It's to keep men on their heels in this culture. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about, um, do women dress too provocative for the gym? And in the gym culture, as many of you might know, if you go to the gym, it's essentially a cold space. It's a space where no one generally talks. No men dare not try to hit on a woman in the gym. It's like hands off thing. And so within that, why in we're seeing so many talking points in relation to men not approaching women, men backing out of relationships, not seeking relationships, and so forth and so on with that, to offset being the defeated man. Okay, because what man of any character of himself and any self value to himself wants to be the defeated man, wants to be the man who, by the degree of relationships, is down out for the count, is unsuccessful in a relationship, unsuccessful in being a man in a relationship, unsuccessful in being a husband in a relationship, and unsuccessful in being a father in a relationship. Okay. And so, this assault towards men, as you hear these terms such as toxic masculinity, have also been weaponized to defeat men, okay? To put men in a position of weakness, um, tagging on from what I said about the whole simp characterization. But going further than that is to defeat men altogether. So it's putting men in this space of defeat before you even get to being a simp. Okay. So, and it's done in many of ways, um, of sorts to get us in that sense. Again, emasculating men, like I said, devaluing them in their worth to their woman, and falling into that entrapment of nonsensical stuff. I have a saying that boys play with toys and men build nations. And so within that, to keep you in a boy's mindset, keep you in a juvenile's mindset, and not in the mindset of a man, not in the mindset of a builder, a creator, or a developer, a caretaker, protector, a provider, and those sort of things. And when you are a defeated man, you, like I said, you are not in the guise of being your true self as a man. You're defeated. Um, the woman or your woman or whoever is running, like they used to say, who wears the pants in a household kind of thing. Okay. And in the cases of today, we're seeing where the women are much more wearing the pants in the household. And that comes about with a defeated man. So that is what I'm going to say on that. For right now, I'm going to be having more enlightenment in regard to other aspects of relationship topics that I'll be giving. So stay tuned for those. I appreciate you coming in and tuning in for this segment, looking at the dynamics of the simp and the defeated man. Thank you, and I'll see you in next time on Relationships Unfiltered.